Hello everyone and welcome back to another great interview from Super Cool Radio. I'm your host as always, the spirit of Super Cool Radio himself, Matthew Thomas. Before I start talking about my guests, just a quick reminder to thumbs up this video if you enjoy it and subscribe to our channel. And make sure to turn on that bell notification, that way you do not miss any of our super cool content. My guest will be Todd Kerns. Todd is an incredible multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and producer. He's been involved with bands such as Slash with Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, The Age of Electric, and Heroes and Monsters. Very recently, Heroes and Monsters released their debut album on January 20th. It is really incredible. I had the opportunity to listen to the album, and it's definitely worth a listen. I'll be chatting with Todd about the new album, Heroes and Monsters, and so much more. So let's dive into this video.
Super Cool Radio!
Before we jump into the show, I want to tell you about our merch store on Threadless. Shop a wide variety of logos with multiple colors and sizes available for each design. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue to make killer content like this episode. Please visit supercoolradio.threadless.com or the link in the description to shop now. Please welcome Todd Kerns.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. 100%. Where are you at?
Based out of South Bend, Indiana.
Nice. Okay, great. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's actually just turned afternoon for me.
There you go. Yeah. It's bright and early over here. Is the how's the weather out there? Is it pretty crazy?
Surprisingly, so it usually like in January and end of December we're like buried in snow, and surprisingly for January it is like 40 degrees here in Indiana, and that is it actually feels nice. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, what a nice well, this has been one of the craziest little winter chapters we've had in a long time. But here in Vegas, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes.
Of course. Yeah, I was going to ask about Vegas, but I mean, I assume it's nice and warm and sunny by you.
Yeah, I went up to Canada for Christmas because that's where I'm from and my family's up there. So that was a bit of an adventure. But yeah, no, it's sort of very mild and very chill here for sure.
Well, I'm glad to hear we're both having some actually decent weather for
yeah,
our area.
exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, Vegas obviously is going to be Vegas, but when did you move to Las Vegas?
Officially, I was down here. Well, it was never really official. I just sort of found myself here in 2006. So it's been about 16 years. I can't really think of the math, but yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I mean, when I sort of came, it was initially just for a gig, and that turned into another gig, and the next thing I knew, I was here. So there was nothing official about it.
I got you. What drew you to staying in Las Vegas?
There was some friends down here gigging and doing very well, and it was very the cost of living was such that I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive, and being able to kind of be a homeowner and be an adult yet still play music was kind of like, wow, this is new, as opposed to being in a band and living in a one bedroom apartment with 3 other people. Just seemed like the right way to go.
Oh, definitely. I unfortunately I've never been to Vegas, but I definitely want to go. Just be nice, a little bit warmer than Indiana most days. So.
Well, it depends what time of year you come, because there can be particularly more than warm, which was basically the surface of the sun at all times.
That is true. I think it's definitely a winter destination.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's the best thing about it, is it's like, come here in the winter and you'll be thrilled. Come here in the summer and you'll be like taken aback, for lack of better words. Yeah.
I believe. Plus, I with my skin, I burn very easily, so
yeah,
might
me
not
too,
be the best.
yeah.
For, yeah, exactly.
I hide indoors like a like a weirdo, but it's fine by me.
I call myself part vampire because it's most of the time I have to hide out. But anyway, but so before, obviously I know we got much to discuss. The new release of Heroes and Monsters coming out on January 20th. But before we get to all of that, I got a fun question before we dive into Heroes and Monsters, and that is, what is one album and one movie you recommend everyone check out in their lifetime?
Oh, wow. One album and one movie. Geez. Well, I don't know. I guess movie-wise, I would probably say something like Jaws. But it's such funny when I say that. It's kind of like, you never saw Jaws? Yeah. I'm kind of a movie nerd. I mean, there are quite a few movies that I recommend that are pretty out there. There's a Korean film called Old Boy, which was really disturbing, that I've recommended and had a couple of friends go, dude, what the hell did you recommend for me? Record wise, I don't know. There's a lot of records. I'm trying to think. I'll go with, like, say, Jellyfish Belly Button. There's a record that's like, isn't an obvious choice, but is in there. Also, the second album is really good too. Yeah, there's so much good music out there, and I actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because there's a lot of that I've been doing lately. Where, what can you recommend as far as newer records go? Because I'm sort of when I get in the car, the first thing I go to is the tried and true music that I've always listened to, and then every once in a while I go, well, what's out that's new that I should be checking out? I think that's sort of it's funny, because when I was younger, it was always all about new music, and then as you get older, it's all about the music you grew up with. So now it's now I'm trying to figure out how to balance that line.
There's definitely so much music out there. Like, I know for me, I had someone tell me that, like, you kind of stick with the same music you listen to in, like, your teenage and early 20s. And that's definitely, I think it's very true for many people. But yeah, like, I have a CD player in my car because I'm not, my car is old and not that high tech. So, like, I usually listen to CDs, which means it's usually older albums.
Right.
So I'm trying to, like, obviously, as you said, find that balance of what's new, but also what's some of my classics I can binge on.
Totally. I mean, it's a challenge, because, like you said, there's so much coming at us at all times that it's hard to really know, and I think that, you find people you trust and let them tell you, well, you should check this out. Okay. And you check it out, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, or at least, according to you, and go from there.
No, that's so true. I've had, like, obviously with doing this podcast, I've had everyone's like, hey, you should check this out. You should check this out. You should check this out. And which is awesome. I find a lot of great music, but then it's, like, overwhelming because, like, I got all this stuff. And then, like, you need, like, to me, you got to be in the right mindset to process new music.
How much time do you have in your day to fill with music and everything else? Yeah.
I mean, for me, and ideally it would be, most of the day, but unfortunately with, all, being an adult and having other responsibilities, I don't quite dedicate that much time to listening to music, unfortunately.
I know. Well, we'll try and find a moment, break off a minute here or there to listen, for sure.
Definitely. But since we are talking about new music, obviously I got to talk about the brand new self-titled album by Heroes and Monsters, available on January 20th. So before we start talking about the album, how did Heroes and Monsters come together? How'd you meet Will and Stef?
Well, I've known Will for a while. He, he's been with Evanescence for quite a while, and I'm a great admirer of his playing, and just, he's a good dude. And then during lockdown, they just sort of reached out and were like, hey, we're doing this thing. What do you think? And it was, literally, I wasn't doing much, as most of us weren't doing much. So it was kind of like, sure, send it on over. And then, we just kept bouncing stuff back and forth. And then it turned into a record. I mean, the lockdown is as much an instrumental part of the process than anything else, because we just sort of, weren't doing much. So just really opened up a lot of opportunity for, so just dove right in. Next thing you know, you got a full album on your plate.
Oh, for sure. And have you recorded with or performed with Will and Stef before?
No, never. I'd never even met Stef in person until we made a music video together. We would work fairly intimately, like as you and I are speaking right now, and it would just be kind of we would just be spending hours together coming up with stuff and working on stuff. And then like, wasn't until later on that you realize I've never physically met this person. It's such a strange concept, but that's very true of so much of our online, life. I mean, there are people that I think of as, quote unquote, oh, he's a friend of mine. And you kind of go, well, on Instagram or something, it's a guy I talk about, like, guitars or cars or whatever, it's sort of like, and then one day you meet in person and it's just, it's such an interesting, I guess the only way it'd be like being a pen pal with somebody for years before actually like physically meeting them. It's like, but with Stef, it was like, it's like that, but it's so much more involved because we're working together a ton, like just sort of constantly sort of working on stuff and communicating and whatnot. And then eventually we kind of hang out.
Oh, for sure. I know exactly what you mean about like, meeting somebody like, but online and then meeting them in person. Like I've got quite a few like friends I talk to every day, but like I've actually never met in person.
I know it's weird. It's weird. It's the 21st century way, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And then like when you finally meet them in person, it feels like you actually you feel a little bit more comfortable because like, okay, I actually know this person, even though I haven't met them in person before. But it is just so crazy with like technology and stuff that how you can connect with people and meet people without actually like physically meeting them. It's it's odd. It's a little strange.
It's true. It's true with people you actually know as well, because there's there's friends of yours that you just keep in contact on via text and some sort of text group kind of thing and group chat. And then like when you finally see them in person, they're like, hey, how you doing? It's been so long. And I feel like it has. I talked to you this morning. It's like, oh yeah, I guess physically we haven't seen each other in, a couple weeks or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's a very bizarre thing, but it's become very normal at the same time.
No, it definitely has, especially with, the lockdowns and pandemic. It became very,
Totally.
It became a whole new life. Like, doing, meeting people like this was pretty much the norm for about a year and a half, even 2 years.
Yeah.
Now. So like for you, was writing and recording this, like, was it a different experience compared to writing and recording with like previous bands and albums?
It is, but I think at the same time, it's, writing and recording is different almost every time. You write and record, by yourself, create by yourself. You create with somebody, sometimes one-on-one. Sometimes you're creating, even when you're writing with somebody, it's sort of like you do stuff together, but then you go home. It's like you're taking home homework and kind of working on it. And so that becomes sort of a solo effort, even though you're collaborating. And that's a lot like what this was like. It's sort of like, you're collaborating, but it's sort of a little bit of a long distance type thing. But at the same time, it works to be, it seems to be just as effective. If you ask me, I had only sort of played in this arena once before, recording and writing long distance kind of thing. But it's not uncommon. People, especially in a world where, say, someone has music and they want someone to put lyrics and vocals to, it sort of becomes, that's sort of a solo endeavor usually too, because the person who makes the music just kind of sends you music and then you just kind of come up with stuff, and it's collaborative at the same time. It's the very definition of collaborative. When it's two people who actually wrote the song, it's sort of a different thing. But it was definitely unique and definitely interesting, because there's sort of it's not like you would imagine sort of, say, 30 years ago, like boxing up a 2-inch tape and mailing it to somebody till they get it and put it up on their machine and call it up. And then they'd have to box it up. So you'd be like spanning, weeks and weeks of waiting in between, where it's sort of instant in this format. So, it was interesting, but it becomes really normal really fast. It's so much a part of what we were just talking about. Everything is, together, alone together, essentially. Like, it just becomes very sort of collaborative, but also solo effort at the same time. It's weird.
Yeah, it is. Once you like dive into the concept of it, obviously it sounds a little weird to be alone but together with people, as you said. But I mean, humans adapt very quickly to stuff, and obviously we're doing something very similar with that, as I said. And I mean, it's the same basis, just doing it in a slightly different way, really.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's like you say, it's like some people's social life is entirely this. Do you know what I mean? Like it's entirely based on this kind of idea, and that's sort of has become really normal. I think it's sort of people feel safe being in their surroundings and sort of essentially being alone, but they can still be very social. I think that's probably the best part of it, really.
Oh, for sure. Oh, definitely. And I mean, again, as I said, it's really cool to be able to connect with people that you've wouldn't have the opportunity to meet
100%.
In other kind of functions or in other ways. So it's so cool. It's very it's like limitless with like what you can do.
It really is. I think it's really opened up a lot of doors that just frankly they weren't even there. Those doors didn't even exist. They were just sort of like that's not a thing. Now it's a thing. You can do really. Stef was in Milan, Italy. Will was in Florida, and I was in Nevada. So it's like the fact that three people can actually sort of collaborate sounds impossible, but it happened. But it's coming out.
Exactly. And I do want to talk about the lyric and music structure of it, but real quick, that's got to be like to coordinate all three different time zones like that, especially in Europe. Had to take some planning.
That's the challenge of it. Yeah, you start to know. Okay, so Milan is okay, and then but we usually sort of have to kind of coordinate conversations and all that kind of stuff in advance, like tomorrow at this time for you, and this time for you, and this time for you, and then you just make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've interviewed a few people from like Australia, so trying to figure out like the time zone, because it's like a 14-hour time difference or something like that, and trying to figure that out. And like so, it's like nighttime for me, it's daytime. Like it's the next day for you. I know it's crazy.
They live in the future over there. Yeah,
exactly. Good way of putting it. But as I said, I did want to talk about the new album going to be released soon. What can people expect, like musically and lyrically, from Heroes and Monsters?
Well, it is, essentially a rock record. I mean, I don't mean to, dumb it down to just that, but essentially guitars, drums, rock and roll, sort of aggressive. Well, it's pretty damn aggressive, frankly. We do kind of bob and weave. There is some give and go, a few surprises along the way where it's not quite just sort of. I'm always afraid of making a record of sort of 10 versions of the same song over and over and over again. So to us, we was sort of like, no, let's make a record that sort of, has some different sort of places to go. I mean, often when you're writing a record, there are a few things that get abandoned along the way, only because you're trying to make, a record of 10, 12 songs or whatever it is, and decide like what's going to be the record, you know what I mean? So that's sometimes shapes the sound and the structure of the record just by kind of getting away from, shaping it based upon what songs you have and what songs can be used.
Oh, definitely. And I've had the opportunity to listen to the album, and
good.
what I really like about it is, you guys have some songs that have like a classic rock vibe. There's some songs where you guys slow it down, and then there's some like borderline like metal song, or pretty much metal songs in there.
Yeah.
And the album really kept my attention. Like I was like, okay, that's something different, and then the next song's something different. So I was like, it kept my attention to listen through the whole album.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, because it is one of those things where I think a lot of people are sort of mentioning how it has a bit of diversity in there that I think is the important thing, that we kind of wanted to make sure it was sort of, when you listen to a Led Zeppelin record back in the day, it never seemed like they were doing the same thing twice. There was sort of, I don't know, it would be like an acoustic bluegrass thing or something, and then they'd be like back to their heavy. I mean, there is Whole Lot of Love and Stairway to Heaven are two different kind of ideas entirely, but that's sort of what we were trying to accomplish anyway.
Oh, definitely. I think you guys did it very well, and I think as you said, it's a very diverse album. So, like, when you're putting the songs together and recording the songs, so like, what do you think of like genres in music, and should artists should they branch out more instead of just, as you said, sticking to like the same basis of a song?
I think it's always. I mean, I think it's important for people to just for artists to just do what they want to do. You know, I mean, I think it gets dangerous when you start thinking about like what I would always kind of comment on was, you know, in the past, people will sort of like, this is happening right now, I'm going to do this. And by the time you've hopped on right now is by the time you put your music out, right now was last year, you know. I think it's important to just listen to your own sort of instincts and just kind of go with what you want to do. That said, it's good to get out of your comfort zone. You know, I think it is kind of, we all do what we do, and we have our sort of you know, our bag of tricks that we go to every time. So I think it's you know, it's important to kind of to change it up once in a while. I feel like, you know, for myself, I feel like I'm changing it up most of the time. I'm doing this gig or that gig, or singing in this, not singing in that, you know, that kind of thing. So it makes for a you know, for me, it's like every time I pick up the guitar, I'm like, or the bass or what are we doing? Oh, okay, cool. And then off you go. I've become quite comfortable with the, you know, the lack of sort of quote unquote lazy comfort of just kind of like doing the same thing every day. But that goes back to everything else I was already saying, that it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what I do, is sort of constantly, you know, in a constant state of change, which is a good thing, I think.
Oh, definitely. You know, it's never, you don't stay stagnant. You know,
No, not at all.
Throughout the whole, and that, I mean, keeps you on your toes, keeps you fresh, and you know, it keeps you to go with the flow to like, okay, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing this. I mean, I think it just sharpens your skills more.
I think so. I think it's, you know, it's, I'm not a fighter or not a warrior type person, but I assume that, you know, when Bruce Lee was learning, you know, he would take up things like boxing and take up things like fencing and different things just to kind of learn different skills to add to his little, you know, his little bag of tricks. And I think that musically, I've tried to do that the whole time. And it's one of those things where, like I said, it's we get really comfortable with our bag of tricks. And I think that that's what we all sort of have, is our strengths that we sort of kind of lean into. But every once in a while, it's good to kind of like, you know, force yourself into a corner and see what you come out with.
Oh, I think so. And I mean, you're either going to learn, you're going to learn from it and succeed, or you're going to learn from it from failure too. So, yeah. I mean, I think you had, you know, I wouldn't say I do it, you know, all the time, but in some instances, I think it's a good idea to kind of put yourself out of your comfort zone and see what happens and see what the results are.
And you learn a lot from falling on your face. You know, I mean, that's, you know, in life in general, I think that you kind of go, okay, what led me to this predicament, and how do I avoid that, or whatever. You know, I think that if you are afraid to fall on your face, which we all are in our own way, you'll never really take chances. So that's just part of the human nature of just kind of just keep swinging. You know what I mean? Like, because you do learn after you've been knocked down a couple of times that you don't stay down, you know, unless it's, you know, it's something serious. But I mean, it's like, you know, you have to learn to regroup and learn how to rally and get back. And that's sort of a big part of the big lessons in life, I suppose.
Oh, it definitely is. And, you know, kind of what I've really noticed myself is like some stuff that I thought like, oh no, this is like the end of the world. And like as I get older, I go, why was I stressing over this? It really wasn't, in the grand scheme of things. It's like, it wasn't that big of a deal anyway.
No, you'll often think about something you were freaking out about 5 years ago and go, why was I making such a big deal about that? Yeah. That's normal.
Yeah, exactly. That's also part of human nature with everything. But I mean, also shows that for me, I'm always constantly thinking of stuff. I'm always trying to evolve and, you know, try to include different elements. That's why, like, sometimes, like, if I have an idea, like if I go to bed, it's like I'm gonna forget it. So like I have to I have to write it down or do something, because I'm gonna forget it.
Yeah, that's the handy thing about having, you know, as much as our phones have become a crutch in many ways, I find it to be a constant sort of, you know, recording information that, you know, it's like, oh, I got to, you know, writing things down in my notes and having all this kind of stuff. I'm sure if anybody found my phone, they'd be like, this person is a psychopath. But it's just kind of like, you know, just kind of constantly like logging, oh, I got to remember this, I got to remember that. Oh, that's a cool line. That's a cool, you know, idea, that kind of stuff. So I think it's important. And back in the day, you'd be carrying a book of paper and a pen all the time, you know, just to kind of, which I still kind of do as well. But I found that the phone has become sort of the new modern replacement of that.
Oh, definitely. I still enjoy hard copies, for some things, like obviously like for my notes and stuff, like for interviews and podcasts and stuff, I like to have a hard copy. But if I'm like on the go somewhere, or if if I don't have pen and pencil, paper with me, then like the phone is definitely my go-to, especially like voice memos. I enjoy them just for myself. I guess I like hearing myself talk, I guess.
That's always a good idea too. I don't do a lot of that, but yeah, it's I do record ideas. I have like a little recorder on my thing that I'm constantly putting down. I come up with something and put it down or speak into it like I said, like a sociopath, and then you just make sense of it later on. Yeah, hopefully.
Exactly. And there's sometimes where I've either written stuff or said stuff, and I go, that doesn't even make any sense.
That's part of the fun, I think.
Yeah. Then trying to decipher what you were going for. Like I remember in high school, I was taking notes for stuff, and it was a history class, and I was like, I wrote down something. I was like doing shorthand, but like not understanding shorthand. So I was like, what did I even say? I don't even remember what my notes were.
I know that I've made that mistake too, where you're like, this is a genius idea, and then you can't make sense of your genius idea. So therefore it was pointless endeavor all around.
Exactly. And one of my other favorites is like if you find like a great storage space for something, but it's so great you don't remember that you put something there.
That's a classic. Yeah. Where did I put that thing? I know I found a spot and like never mind. Then you find it like 5 years later, and like when you don't need it anymore, you've replaced it or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought ink for my printer, and I said like, I'm gonna put this in such a great spot. I'm gonna remember it and all that. And then I was like, oh, I ran out of ink. I'll buy some more ink. And then like after the new ink showed up, I'm like, oh man, I had a whole nother cartridge here.
It just wasn't anywhere obvious. It was somewhere kind of out of the way. Yeah.
Exactly. And like in the moment, I was like, oh, this is going to be a perfect place to put it. And
of course. Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
but
we outsmart ourselves all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. So as I'm wrapping up dinner with Todd, I had such a great time chatting with you about.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it was so great to actually get to meet you. Love, obviously with the Slash and Myles Kennedy Conspirators, but I really enjoyed the new Heroes and Monsters album as well. So as we're closing this out, like, what are the plans for Heroes and Monsters and yourself for 2023?
Well, 2023 is an interesting year. It's first off, Heroes and Monsters is doing a run of Italy, which is sort of one of those things that was a gig and turned into another gig and then a bunch of gigs. So we get to go to Italy, which is exciting. I haven't been overseas since 2019. So Took, my other band with Brent Fitz and a bunch of friends is constantly doing stuff. Tracy Guns and I wrote a record that's coming out this year. So it's just been it's going to be one of those years where it's just like a lot of new music and a lot of new experiences, which I'm really excited about. It's again, even the Tracy thing came up as sort of a lockdown, conversation that became a thing. You just never know until, I'm kind of one of those guys that it's sort of like, I try to say yes to as well, I was going to say not as many things, but I try to say yes when I can, when I can work it into a schedule and it sounds like fun and it sounds exciting. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. How does it work in the big picture? I don't know, but it's like, all I know is that, one day I'll be 80 years old going like, well, I'm glad I did that. It's like, you can't, it's really easy to say no. It's really easy to not do things. You know what I mean? And I think that I've learned that as long as I'm sort of moving forward, I feel best when I'm creating and making music,
Oh, definitely. It's a great way of putting it, that it is very easy to say no to things, but I mean, obviously you had to deal with, if there's scheduling, issues or whatever, but like, if it's something cool, something you want to do, if something that, obviously, as you said, moving forward, it's, you can make those, accommodations and, make it happen. And I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. I think you've wrapped it up better than I could.
Hey, well, I'm the host. I have to, I got to put a nice bow on stuff.
I love it. Yeah, that's why you're the host.
But last thing. So, if anyone's interested, where can they find obviously yourself, Heroes and Monsters, all the projects you have going on? Where can they find that the best online?
Best place to start is just Todd Kerns on most everything. Todd Kerns on Twitter. Heroes of Monsters, the band, or Heroes of Monsters band is on Instagram and a few other places. So yeah, you'll find us. You just come looking for us. We're around.
Right on. I'll drop some links for Todd Kerns in the description of this podcast as well. Todd, awesome time chatting with you. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, brother.
Thank you too. For Todd Kerns of Todd Kerns, Heroes of Monsters / Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, all that great stuff. I'm your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Super Cool Radio. And remember, stay frosty.